Little G was my first rap name, believe it? This is real history here. Growing up, my nickname was Gino. So when I first started rapping, I went by the name of Little G. Oh, then it went to Gino Death. By the time we started making records for real, before we got our record deal, it went to MC Azim. From Cleveland, Ohio originally, I moved to Dallas, Texas, when hip hop was still, really coming up. I was in a group called Something Fresh, and we made the first rap record to ever come out of Dallas, Texas. It was called Oak Cliff. So you familiar with, South Bronx from, KRS-One, Boogie Down Productions. We made our own version. There's an area in Dallas called Oak Cliff. There's a place in Dallas known as Oak Cliff where you can tell the rap from the riff. So that's straight up 1980s hip hop. We had our own label. It's called Get Off Me Records. And we were kind of like a hip hop band. We were the Stetsasonic of Texas. We had 2 DJs, we had a drummer, had a guitar player, a white kid playing guitar, 3 MCs, and a hype man. So we had a big crew. By the time we morphed and got a record deal, we started a group called Nemesis. So a few people fell off. Still pretty big crew. And we put out the first rap album ever to come out in Dallas. And we were hustling. I was always behind the scenes. I was, always intrigued with the business side of it. Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, Berry Gordy, of course. Reading about these guys growing up, like that's who I wanted to be. Those were my influences. I did everything from finding a recording studio to finding the distribution, big state distributors. Shout out to Noble Wumble, who was the independent promoter for Big State back in the day. I also did all the retail. I had a retail background. So we would go to this place called A&R Records. We would press up the records, get the acetates for the vinyl, then cassettes. And then I would go throughout the city. Hastings was a big chain, kind of like the Tower Records. And I would go throughout the city and give records on consignment, give them 10 pieces of vinyl, 10 cassettes, come back in a week, get our money, re-up, like that. And it got to a point where the orders just started getting so big, the independent distributor, Big State, they were like, well, who are these kids selling all these records? And they gave us a distribution deal. So that lasted about 6 months to a year. And then Profile, who was distributed, Tommy, all the independent labels, Tommy Boy, Sleeping Bag, Profile, Def Jam, they were all distributed by Big State locally. Promoter, Noble, hooked up with this guy named Ernie Phillips. He's a very famous promoter. Actually, the first guy I ever learned about promotion, named Ernie Phillips. He had a hookup with Profile, Atlantic, all these labels, so he asked to be our manager. Now, unbeknownst to us, he was already telling these labels that he had a line on this group. It was actually 2 groups. It was Nemesis and Ron C. That he had a line on these guys and that, he could bring us to the label. So we signed a management contract with him. And then we got our first record deal. So we were the first rap group to be signed to a nationally distributed label out of Dallas, Texas. And this was in 88, 89. I did that first record called To Hell and Back, which was actually a retread of the first record that we did independently. We sold like 25,000 copies out of our trunk, literally. The funny thing was, so I told you we had this big crew. So from the time we started the Nemesis album, To Hell and Back, to the time we signed the Profile, it went from like 8 people to 3. So it was me, DJ Snake, who's still in Dallas, shout out to Snake, and my man Big Al, rest in peace. Al was actually one of the hype men when we were the big crew, but he wound up taking on rap duties. And what was the crazy part was, Profile was like, we're not gonna give you money to cut a whole new record. So what we'll let you do is you can put 5 new records on the album that are just you and Al. 5 of the records that we found you with have to go on the album. So if you watch the videos, like the first video is called Pusher Man. It's me and Al rapping, but it's really me, Bun B, and Easy Rock on the vocal. So that was kind of weird. It's cool. Second album's called Munchies for Your Babes, which is probably our biggest record. I don't know if it's certified, but it definitely went gold. I mean, the album came out pre-SoundScan, and if you Google SoundScan now, it's probably like 400-something thousand, so it's a gold record. I'd like to get my plaque at some point. I tell people I got a gold record, because I do. So that record was a record called Munchies for Your Bass, which was like the biggest bass record in the southern region, from Arizona all the way over to Florida, and then Magic Mike had bigger records than us. And that was probably the biggest record we did. Did that album, went on tour, went on promo tour, all over the U.S. You know, as things happen, you know, you've been with a crew 4 or 5 years. I always wanted to be behind the scenes of business anyway. You know, I just decided to go off and go back to school. The group continued on. Ron C, who was a solo artist at the time, joined the group. Another guy named Joe Mack was a partner of ours from the hood. He joined the group. I actually helped him write the first single for the third album called Can't Figure It Out, and that was an album called Temple of Boom. I went back to school, and while I was going to school, got back into retail, I got into radio, and that's kind of how I got my start on the business side full time. And then Mr. went on to put out another record called The People Want Bass, and then that was the end of the deal, and kind of everybody went their separate ways. Corey Robbins and Steve Plotnicki were the presidents, chairman of the company, and I think because we had already done our, you know, we'd already put the record together, and it was more of a business deal than it was an A&R deal. They just kind of did the deal with us. So our interactions were with Steve and more so Corey than anybody else. But our interaction was with Corey making the next couple records. You know, in our era, like if you want to put some context to it, like we were in the special ed, In Too Deep, raw bass era of Profile. So, you know, Run DMC by then were legends. I think they might have done maybe two more records for Profile at the time. And then coming after us, like DJ Quick, Second to None, they got signed right around the same time we got signed as well. So that was kind of the era that I came up in terms of being on Profile.
When Little John and all the down south guys were using their regional influence on labels, and all those labels were like, damn, why would I pay X amount of dollars for all these samples? This dude here sold gold in his neighborhood, punching 2 notes on a Triton with no samples. As a businessman, I gotta look at that.
You thinking you helping their dream work is gonna help your dream as well, man. And the fucking moment was just like, hey man, swallow your pride, take that energy, and you help create a blueprint, do that for yourself, man.
We're in a male-dominated industry, and we think that we're the enemy, and that's stupid. And so I started this event to bring all these women together that feel like they're so different and show them that they're not. And so they can network, understand that relationships do matter, and it's not just relationships with men. It's relationships with other women also.
For us, the accolades and the recognition came naturally. It was never, you know, our radio show was never a platform to get someplace else. It was the end result. It's what we wanted. We didn't have any ambitions for the show other than, like Bob always says, other than to have an incredible tape the next day.